Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Port Phillip City Council. The City of Port Phillip respectfully acknowledges the traditional owners of this land, the people of the Kulin Nations. We pay respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. We acknowledge and uphold their continued relationship to this land. This meeting is being conducted in a hybrid style and is streamed via Council's webcast page and Facebook Live. Streams and recordings of Council meetings are copyrighted and cannot be altered, reproduced, or republished without the permission of Council. If we experience any technical difficulties this evening, we will adjourn the meeting for a short time to resolve the issue. I remind attendees that any member of the public addressing Council must extend due courtesy and respect to Council and the processes under which it operates, and must take direction from the Chair whenever called on to do so. Speakers must remain respectful, and statements or questions must not be defamatory, offensive, or objectionable, aimed at embarrassing a councillor or a member of Council staff, or relate to a matter outside the powers of Council. I note that our CEO, Chris Carroll, is unwell, unable to attend tonight's meeting. Brian T., General Manager of City Growth and Development, will be the presiding officer for tonight's meeting. Thank you. The first item is the request to attend by electronic means. I've been advised by the CEO that we have received no requests to attend electronically for tonight's meeting. We'll move on to apologies. Councillor Clark is not in attendance at tonight's meeting and has requested a leave of absence from the 28th of July to the 28th of August 2023. Councillors, I now seek a mover for the motion that Council grants a leave of absence for Councillor Clark from Friday the 28th of July to Monday the 28th of August 2023. Councillor Sierrakoff to move, Councillor Martin to second. All right, now put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. I'll also just advise everybody that Councillor Pearl is running late, so he will be joining us later on, but not yet. On to minutes of previous meetings. Councillors, the minutes of the Council meeting held on the 19th of July 2023 have been circulated. Are there any questions regarding these minutes? I see none. If not, can I have a motion to confirm these minutes? Councillor Sierrakoff and Councillor Baxter to second. Thank you. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. On to conflict of interest. Does anyone have a conflict of interest in a matter being discussed at tonight's meeting? I see none. We'll move on. I'm going to read a statement. So before we continue the agenda, I would like to take this opportunity to read a statement on behalf of Council. Council wishes to convey its heartfelt congratulations to the Port Melbourne Football Club for their premiership in the 2023 VFLW Grand Final on Sunday against Collingwood Football Club. After a competitive finals campaign with an exceptionally close semi-final, this is a great achievement for the club, Port Phillip community, and women in sport more broadly. Success coming so early in the team's inception is a testament to the work the club and the players have invested to gain this result. We look forward to continuing our relationship with the Port Melbourne Football Club ahead of the 2024 season. This success will assist in supporting participation and partnership with the local football clubs, particularly junior girls beginning their football careers. We hope you enjoy the celebration that you are hopefully still having, and wish you all the best for the remainder of the VFL season and future campaigns. Go Borough! Now we'll move on to public question time and submissions. Under Council's governance rules, public questions can only be asked about items not on the agenda. Therefore, if you're speaking to an item on the agenda tonight, please note I will not refer the questions to an officer for response. However, a councillor may wish to take up the question on your behalf when the item is considered. Yeah, got that. Thank you. So we have one speaker who is joining us. No speakers virtually. Sorry, everyone's in the room. It's been a change. So we don't have to tell how to work the WebEx page. So I'll now call upon the people who are in the room. The microphone should already be on. Do you see the light? Okay, thank you. It's on. When I call your name, please come up, say your name, your suburb, and you'll be given 3 minutes to speak. So I first call upon Claire Muir, speaking to item 10.2, options for regulation and management of short stay accommodation. Hi, Claire.
Hi. Thank you. I'm talking about short-term lets this evening. I've been a super host for almost 10 years.
Sorry, real quick, name and suburb for the record,
Sorry,
please.
Claire Mears, St Kilda.
Thank you.
Apologies. I've been a super host for almost 10 years, meaning I'm a 5-star host. I offer family-friendly accommodation to guests from all walks of life. I've provided a roof over the head of hundreds of families who are visiting St Kilda for appointments at the Royal Children's Hospital, attending football matches, shows at the Palais, Pride, St Kilda Festival, triathlons. I housed medical staff during COVID for those who couldn't make it home. And I'm also emergency accommodation for those affected by floods and fires. I'm exactly who most hosts are, just someone with an investment property who's been scorned by the permanent rental system. I'll never list it permanently again. With a non-Australian husband and a daughter, the flexibility this offers me ensures our overseas family have somewhere to stay for long periods when we simply don't have the room to accommodate them in our own home. I've hosted families calling Australia their home, and I'm proud that all eventually settled in Bayside. Ironically, I had a guest leave a week early in December last year because of a permanent renter across the road partying all weekend and police not bothering to show up. With Airbnb, you can evict unruly people within 24 hours if they're causing a problem to your neighbours. In 10 years, I've had one complaint from a neighbour in my apartment block, and it was a subtle nudge because the 2 boys with terrible jet lag were jumping off the bunk beds. The simple fact is short-term rentals aren't the problem. The human behaviour and the lack of respect of anyone's right to a quiet living is the issue, and you'll get that whether you live next door to a full-time renter, an owner, and I'm sure you're aware of some of the issues that property owners were faced with by housing authorities who didn't think twice about putting people with drug addictions, drug dealing and terrible mental health issues, putting others at dangers. It happens everywhere. I commend the report pulled together and point out that 153 complaints over 7 years is minimal, and even more confusing that 44 came in one go, coincidentally after it was raised in a council meeting a couple of months ago. Even more worrying is that many were anonymous. So as a data geek myself, I'm afraid I'm going to have to question the credibility of some of the information. The list of complaints, which is noise, antisocial behaviour, bins left out, tossing cigarettes, New Year's Eve parties, excessively loud balconies. Have you heard the abandoned COVID dogs that are barking daily around St Kilda? It's actually quite sad. It's our neighbourhood every day of the week, no matter whether it's a short-term rental or long-term. My request is that Council please not weigh in into getting involved in short-term rentals at all. I want my rubbish collected on time. I want trees planted and maintained. I want Grey Street footpath fixed and levelled. I'd like better lighting in the dark alleys. That's what I'd like from my council, and not getting involved in something that affects less than 1% of the City of Port Phillip. By all means, let STLs be regulated, but leave it to the state for conformity. If Council weigh in and we start paying more than the eye-watering rates we already fork out, something else in the community will have to give. I've got one more line.
Go ahead.
If Council make it difficult or costly for short-term rentals, I'd like people to think about my neighbour who simply rents out a room to young students travelling to Australia for some extra needed cash after being widowed. They're basically the demographic of some of our short-term rental people.
Thank you very much, Claire.
Thanks.
I call upon Ray Hansen, speaking to item 10.2, options for regulation and management of short stay accommodation. Hi, Roy.
Hi there. Roy Hansen. I live in St Kilda as well. So I'm talking to the report. Unfortunately, from a marketing research perspective, the report and its data is very flawed and does not give the correct picture of the situation. My main concern with the data used is whether the Council Officer came up with a total number of 744 short-term accommodations. Using real data from inside Airbnb and AirDNA, you can count 2,692 listings as of yesterday. And that's for Airbnb only, not taking into Booking.com and other platforms. This conservative number totals of 4% of the housing stock in City of Port Phillip, 4 times greater than indicated in the report. These numbers completely skew the potential cost to the Council in the summary. Based on the actual number of listings, Council would turn $1 million profit from registration fees alone. The 50 top Airbnb hosts in City of Port Phillip controls 543 full-time listings between them. That's an average of 10 properties each. So not treating these operators as a commercial business is just ignorant. My other concern, as voiced to the CEO at an early stage, is how incredibly difficult it was for anyone to navigate the website and find out where to lodge the complaint. As per local law S59, short stay accommodation is included in the definition of commercial property. As a ratepayer, I am asking for S59 to be used to control short-term accommodations when it's detrimentally affect neighbourhood amenities and create nuisance. This does not contradict Owners Corporation Act. As for benefits to short-stay accommodations to the community, the report takes a very superficial approach to it with no data to back it up. To be honest, it sounds more like a marketing exercise from Airbnb itself. Many of the statements seem to be personal opinions of the council officer who wrote it, and again, with no data to back it up.
Please refrain from speaking about council officers.
After highlighting some of the major flaws of this report, I suggest that the report should be reviewed by an independent professional to provide real figures. Any assumption or statements must be backed up with data before the options in the summary is being voted on. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, one more speaker. I call upon Vince Carfora, speaking to item 7.1, joint letter requesting installation of a gate to restrict public access to a lane. Hi, Vince. Please take a seat. Name and...
My name is Vince Carfora, and I live in Port Melbourne. It's just basically installing a gate to stop unwanted public coming in and using it as a public toilet. And I mean by using it as number ones and number twos. And also people walking in with dogs, and dogs using it as a toilet as well. Now I have my mother-in-law, she's 87 years old. She's been living there for almost 58 years. And the condition of that laneway is absolutely disgusting after these people have been through it. Now, she has an injury at the moment, and that's her only access, flat access, to get to a taxi, to go to doctors, to do the shopping. She can't use the front because the front has 2 large steps. I asked the council, they've given me guidance in purchasing land. I spoke to the neighbours and the cost is way too high. We can't afford it, especially when they add on GST. Also, the land is not useful to build on. There's a lot of services, the sewer, gas, water. It's a dead land. We can't build on it. So all we're asking is, actually we're begging that we get a gate put in to keep us safe. We've been abused, we've been sworn at, threatened, and it's just not on, especially for Maria.
Thank you, Vince.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Sirkov has a question for you. You can come back and answer. It's good to use the microphones because it's being recorded.
Oh, sorry.
So go ahead.
Oh, welcome. I'm just wondering how many properties would... I've looked at the map, the area. Just how many properties would be affected and would require sharing keys or some kind of...
There's only 3 properties. There's my property, there's a laneway, and my next door neighbours. And Maria's property runs at the end of the laneway. She has full access right of way because she's had that for over 86 odd years. What's happened is that laneway used to be dirt and a little brick valley for the water. And my costs, my time, my effort, I've cleaned it all up, I've paid for extra bricks, I've made it flat for them to use. I've maintained it, I've added security lights, I've added security system, try and keep these people out.
And how frequently do you have people coming down this lane?
It varies. In a week, it could be 5-6 times. I've had one, last 2 weeks, I've had a lady come through, a dog off the lead, dog's gone up the laneway, done its business, I've come out and I've asked her, excuse me, do you mind we use this as a private laneway? And because the house went up for sale a few months back, she goes, I definitely know this is not a private laneway. So this now is going to get out there and more people. I've had people just come in, just kids, young kids just standing there playing around while they go up the road, pay for their drugs and stuff like that. And then they draw on walls, and it's a dangerous laneway. Lucky I have a sense of light, but it doesn't do anything. They just come in, they steal our rubbish bins, they fill up our rubbish bins that we're supposed to be using. All I'm asking is, I've maintained it for over 18 years, and I'm willing to keep maintaining it. I've never asked a cent for anyone. We solely purpose is for Maria to use that. And so if we had a gate, it'll stop people coming in, unwanted people coming in and doing all their business or do whatever in that laneway.
Thank you very much.
Just for safety.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, that is the end of public question time and submissions, so we'll move on to councillor question time. Councillors, do you have any questions of a general nature that you'd like to raise right now? I see none. We'll keep going on to ceiling schedule. Councillors, we have no items for ceiling on tonight's agenda. Next, then, is petitions and joint letters. Councillors, we have one joint letter and no petitions on tonight's agenda. 7.1 is joint letter requesting installation of a gate to restrict public access to lane. Do councillors have any questions of the officers in regards to the item? Was that a question? Oh, Councillor Baxter?
Thank you. Just with regards to listening what the gentleman was saying before, just noting that a proper response will be given later. This is just to take on the petition. But are there other examples where this sort of treatment has occurred before? And if so, does that affect things like adverse possession and stuff like that?
Oh, sorry, Lachlan Johnson.
Through you, Mayor. So, at the moment, the access to the laneway is governed under the Road Management Act. It's not possible for council to install a gate and restrict access under the Road Management Act. But tonight we're receiving the petition and we'll provide a response in a number of weeks where we're going to look at other options that could potentially be available. As the resident has spoken about this evening, there has been some correspondence about the purchase of the public road. So in other words, discontinuing the road, closing the road, having it become freehold land and then being sold. That's not a practical, what's been advised, that's not a practical option in this case. So officers are going to consider alternatives that potentially achieve the same outcome in the next few weeks and bring something back to council. With regards to other circumstances across the city where similar issues have arisen, I'll have to take that on notice. I'm not sure of any off the top of my head.
Thank you. Do you know the question?
Yeah, just a follow up. So if a discontinuance was gone through with, we could then consider a gate potentially. It's actually the fact that it's a road that, is that what you're saying, makes it?
Yeah, Lachlan Johnson.
Yeah, through you, Mayor, yes. So as a road, it needs to have free access, so we can't put a gate on a road. But if the road is discontinued, it's no longer a road, so therefore we could look at other access controls around that space.
Thank you. Any other questions tonight? Otherwise, we are just voting to receive this tonight. So we'll advance. Let's see, if no more questions, I'll look for a mover of this item, Councillor Crawford, and a seconder, Councillor Martin. Councillor Crawford, would you like to speak to it? Councillor Martin, would you like to speak to it?
Very briefly, Mayor, thank you. Thank you so much to the Speaker for outlining those very, very serious concerns. It sounds like a quite unpleasant situation for the people surrounding this laneway. Thank you to Mr Johnson for outlining the difficulties in implementing the request that's put out in the letter. But I'm sure that our officers will come back to us very, very quickly with an alternative recommendation, perhaps not the one that is set out here in the letter, but something that enables us to act quickly so that the people surrounding this laneway can have a nice, peaceful existence without the issues that they've outlined. So quite unpleasant, and I'm looking forward to us finding a way of addressing this.
Thank you. Any other councillors want to speak to it? Otherwise, let's take that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. All right. You're welcome to stay or you're welcome to leave, whatever you like, since your item is done. Thank you for coming in. All right, councillors, we're going to now move into the presentation of reports. The first one is 10.1, Community Safety Plan and Public Space CCTV cameras and policy report. Councillors, do we have any questions of the officers in relation to the report? No? All right. Then I'll look for someone who wants to move this or something else. Anybody want to move this one? I'll move it. Who would like to second it? Hold on, let me write my own name. So, Councillor Bond to second. Okay, I'll reserve. Councillor Bond, would you like to speak to it? Any other councillors want to speak to the item? Councillor Sirikoff?
Thank you, Mayor. I think that council needs to continue to keep up with the latest strategies so that we can deliver safer spaces for our community and also for visitors to our city, and at the same time deter and prevent criminal behaviour on our high streets. Although this is not an easy job, this comes down to managing risks with partners such as the Victoria Police Force. Maintenance and upgrades with the latest technologies of council's CCTV infrastructure is just one of those mechanisms, and which go hand in hand with the local council laws, which have just been implemented on the revised laws on the 1st of August of this year. Over the past 2 years, the expectations of safer streets has been demonstrated by our residents at several community safety meetings in the St Kilda Town Hall, and just recently we had a large panel of Victorian Police, which was a panel of senior police and staff speaking to our residents at a community safety meeting. I'm aware that our local police are supportive of upgrades to the current CCTV. Upgrades to this infrastructure is one way to assist police to investigate crime and deal with the latest crime trend and statistics, which show for June 2023 that COP is unfortunately close to double the Victorian rate of 5,344 per 100,000 of population, which includes a 7.7 increase in the last quarter. So I'm supportive of this recommendation when it brings safety to the forefront of our community.
Thank you. Any other councillors speaking to the item? Otherwise, I'll close. Thank you, Councillor Sirikoff. You've said a lot that I would say. This is very important to our community to make sure it's a safe place. I'd also like to continue the advocacy I've been doing with the state government to help fund this, to the replacements. It's a tool that is used by our local police and important to keep it going. All right, let's take that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. All right, on to 10.2. This is the options for regulation and management of short stay accommodation. Councillors, we have the officers' report. Does anyone have a question of the officers in relation to the report? Councillor Niagui?
There's been a number of questions from the community in regard to the calculation of the 750 or so listings in Port Phillip. I was wondering if one of the officers could just clarify for the community as to how we came to that figure.
Cindy, would you like to answer that?
Thank you, through the Mayor. We acknowledge that...
You'll have to speak into the microphone just because it's being recorded. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Okay, I'll start again. We acknowledge that the data immediately available to the community on websites like AirDNA appears to be much higher than what officers have researched. And we research sites such as Booking.com, Stays, VRBO, Airbnb, Cozy, etc. We believe this discrepancy to be because officers have not counted properties outside of municipal boundaries that show up in search areas. We did data matching to account for duplicate listings on the various platforms and across the various suburb areas. We did data matching to account... we also did not count listings that were greater than 30 days and would not really fit the brief of what truly is short stay accommodation. And we also excluded serviced apartments, hotels and the like that were listing only a room to rent and not an entire property. What is important to note is that short stay accommodation is a fluid market, and with what is listed at any given time changing depending on the situation in the municipality. We carried out this data analysis on 2 separate occasions, in April and again in June, so that we could be sufficiently confident in this data.
Thank you. Any further questions of officers? Councillor Martin.
In a similar question to Councillor Niagi's, officers' data show us a significant spike in the number of concerns raised about short-term accommodation in the month of June. Can I ask, and obviously officers can't divulge exactly which premises are being complained about, were there many new premises that we hadn't heard of before that were complained about? Did these complaints relate to only a few premises, or are we not sure where these complaints came from?
Mark J.
Thank you. And through you, Mayor, yes, there has been a spike in the June period of complaints that we have received. There was not a particular pattern there across the entire municipality, but they're all Airbnb listed properties. The spike was really around anonymous complaints, which has made it very difficult for officers to investigate.
Thank you. Further questions? If not, I'm looking for a mover of the officer's report or something else. Councillor Bond to move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Crawford to second. Thank you. Councillor Bond, would you like to speak to it?
Procedural motion.
Okay. So we'll handle the procedural motion. Councillor Martin.
So, through you, Mayor, in accordance with Section 42 of Councillors' Governance Rules, I move a procedural motion that the matter be adjourned to the Council meeting to be held at 6:30 p.m. on the 4th of October 2023.
Thank you. I'll second that. So we'll go ahead and vote on the procedural motion. Oh, no, I don't. Oh, it gets debated. Sorry. All right. Councillor Martin, would you like to speak to it first?
Thank you, Mayor. As we've been debating behind closed doors amongst ourselves with councillors about the various options there, I find myself believing that most of the recommendations in option 1, which is the officer's recommendation, are very sound recommendations. However, I also believe that we do have powers under Clause 59 of the local law to act in particular situations where other efforts to solve issues have failed. So, for example, an owner's corporation has been unable to resolve issues. So while I firmly believe that most matters concerning the management of short-stay accommodation amenities should be dealt with by the state government, and we've certainly asked the state government through our local government association to develop laws that can be uniform across the state, I believe that it behoves us as a council to come up with at least the potential to use Clause 59 of the local law if and when we believe that all other efforts to solve a dispute have failed. Now, option 2, as it's currently listed, doesn't spell that out. It basically leaves Clause 59 as there to be used any time there's any complaint, and I believe that could create an unnecessary workload for officers, and it also means that many complaints which could be sorted out easily at the local level will come to council and be escalated to council when it's not necessary. Since neither of the two options fully spell out a solution to the concerns I've raised, I'm asking that councillors are prepared to leave this until council officers can come back and bring back a recommendation to us that allows us to fully implement most of the recommendations in the current officers' rec in option 1, but also provide an alternative which allows, under particular circumstances, for officers to implement local law clause 59 to deal with situations which can't be solved in any other way. And in the meantime, we hope that the state government eventually comes up with some overall state guidelines, which means that we don't need to take this on at a local level. So, yeah, supportive of 90% of the officers' rec, but believe we need to give ourselves the option to be able to act in particular circumstances using clause 59 There's nothing in the current rec that allows us to do that appropriately. We need to check our legals, and I hope that councillors will support this procedural motion, which will allow us to come back in a few weeks' time and come up with what I believe is a better motion than is currently on the table.
Thank you. I'll speak to the seconder for the procedural motion. We've heard people speak for and against. This is really important to our community. We need to get it right. So I'm happy to take a little bit more time to explore the options and come back on the item. Would anybody else like to speak to this procedural motion? Councillor Bond?
Just to say that I would be happy to vote on this tonight and would be happy to support the officer's recommendation had we been allowed to vote on this tonight. I just will say this is probably going to get up this procedural motion, even though I don't support it. But I will say a lot of the discussion has been around the number of premises on Airbnb, the number of listings. I probably spent 25 minutes today on Airbnb, and yes, when you put in the name St Kilda, it comes back and says, there's 1,000+ properties available in St Kilda, and people are using that to say, hey, the numbers the officers have given us are wrong. But when you drill down into those, it spits out properties in all along St Kilda Road, St Kilda East, Balaclava, Elwood, Middle Park. They're all included under a St Kilda search. So whether when you put St Kilda in, it's including properties within a 2 kilometre, 5 kilometre, 10 kilometre radius. I don't know how they come up with the 1,000, but when you go to the mapping function and you look at on the map the actual number of properties in what I would consider to be the St Kilda boundary, i.e. excluding St Kilda West and St Kilda East and all these other Elwood and all those things, the numbers there were generally consistent with the numbers our officers have here in their report. So I can't see or couldn't see this afternoon how they were missing thousands of properties that people are telling us are on these listings. So, my own research sort of aligns with what's in the report in front of us. So that's just my... No,
sorry, we can't have interruptions from the gallery, please.
So they're generally consistent with the officers. So just to put that out there, I'd be happy, as I said, I'd be happy to vote on this tonight. I won't support an adjournment, but I feel I'm probably going to lose that tonight. Thank you, Councillor Bond. Anybody else speaking to the procedural motion? Councillor Baxter?
Yeah, I won't be supporting the deferral of this motion. I understand the councillors want to get it right. I think the best way to get it right would be to look at doing consultation with the community on implementing a registration and compliance system, as has happened in other councils in Victoria and across Australia. I, just like most people, would rather the state regulate this. They're refusing to do so. So given the impacts upon our community, I think that we should be stepping into that space, and perhaps we can step out again if the state decides to implement a statewide registration scheme. But we need to be doing right by our community, and I don't see any benefit in deferring this motion.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, we're voting on the procedural motion. We'll go to the vote now. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's majority because we have 7 councillors, so it passes. All those against? 1, 2. Thank you. Sorry, now it passes. Apologies. You guys are getting along so well. Okay. Thank you. I'll catch up on my paperwork. All right. So we'll move on to 13.1, the Electoral Representation Review. Response to the Electoral Representation Advisory Panel Preliminary Report. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers in relation to this report? No questions? All right. I'll look for a mover of this. Thank you, Councillor Martin. To second, Councillor Sirikoff. Councillor Martin, would you like to speak to it?
Thank you to the officers for preparing the report, which is based on the Victorian Electoral Commission's recommendations. Whether or not Council supports this, members of the public, anyone listening in, anyone else out there, you'll have an opportunity at the public hearings to put your own views. I think what the officer's recommendation here is a very reasonable one, and I'm happy to support it, but I also advise people out there that anyone who lives in the city of Port Phillip who'd like to have some input into the process will have their opportunity during the public hearings, and if you think that Council's got it wrong, you can have your chance to make that view, and then at some stage in the next few months the Electoral Commission will finally announce what the boundaries are. So whether they're the ones that Council is supporting tonight or others, we'll have to wait and see. But Thank you, officers. Thank you, councillors. I think our recommendation is a very reasonable one. Hope the Electoral Commission looks on it favourably.
Thank you. Councillor Sirikoff, do you want to speak to it? No? Anybody else want to speak to the item? Councillor Baxter?
Thank you. Yeah, I won't be supporting this submission, as I don't think any of the three models given by the ERAP worked well enough to meet their own criteria, with great respect to them who put them together. So I'll be putting in my own submission as a further option, but yeah, I can't support supporting one of those options. So I'll probably abstain, I guess.
Thank you. Anybody else speaking to the item? If not, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Okay, all those against? All those abstaining? Okay, then that's carried. Okay. On to 13.2. This is the Municipal Association of Victoria State Council for October 2023 submissions. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers in relation to the report? No? All right. I'm looking for someone to move this or something else. Councillor Martin? Who would like to second it? All right. I'll second it. Councillor Martin, would you like to speak to it?
Thank you to the officers for developing these recommendations to the MAV conference. The first one about a coordinated approach to the development of a regulatory and compliance framework that's consistent across the state will make life so much easier for all of our local councils and make life so much easier for all of our communities if the whole state is working under the same regulatory framework. At the moment, there are inconsistencies, and I note that other states have been able to make things consistent. Hopefully the MAV can pressure our state government to have the same consistency here in Victoria. The second one I note is that it concerns open space. When we're asking the MAV and the state government to note that open space is critical to ensure livability, health and thriving communities. And we're noting ongoing concerns regarding the failure to provide open space in developing areas like Fisherman's Bend. And we're advocating to the state government to prioritise the delivery of open space, including working with councils to develop and deliver open space strategies. And this is quite timely because as recently as last Sunday, Council was advocating publicly for the currently listed area that's listed in the Fisherman's Bend Master Plan as open space to be used as open space, and there are concerns that there may be in other parts of our community an intent to use the land in particular that's adjacent to the North Port Hopeville for area for something other than open space. So very, very timely that this motion's going through to the MAV.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. I'm pretty good. You said it all. Thank you very much. Any other councillors want to speak to it? If not, we'll take it to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. Great. On to 13.3. Now, we're going to take the next three en bloc. So that means 13.3, which is status of council decisions and questions taken on notice recorded by council the 1st of April to the 30th of June 2023, as well as 13.4, councillor expenses monthly reporting for June 2023, and 13.5, updates to the S5 instrument of delegation, council to the chief executive officer. We will take one vote for the three items, but councillors can ask questions or speak to any of them in the one go up front. So here we go. Does anybody have any questions in relation to any of the items? No? Then I'm looking for a mover of the three items. Councillor Martin. Is there a seconder for the three items? Councillor Crawford. Thank you. Councillor Martin, would you like to speak to it?
Again, very briefly, Mayor, I was going through the list of council meeting and planning committee decisions, and I'm amazed at the amount of work that we do as a council and the amount of work that our council officers do. If anyone thinks that our council officers and the council sitting around this table are not fully employed in looking after the people of the City of Port Phillip, I suggest they go through and look at all the motions that have gone through and the work that's come out of those motions, because it's a very good record of what our council's done over the last few months. So I'd like to highlight that and commend the three motions to you. The three recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford? No? All right, I would like to add just on the expenses report, there's a large expense against me, and I did do the AICD course. However, I used our existing MAV credits, so there was no additional cost to council, but it has to still be reflected there. All right, anybody else speaking to the item tonight? The items, 3 items? Nope. Otherwise, let's take it to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. Minutes. All right, I've been told that Councillor Pearl's here in 20 minutes. We'll see if we are still in the meeting. Well, we got one more item. So we're done with the presentation reports, and we're going on to the notice of motions. Councillors, we have one notice of motion tonight. It's 14.1. It's a motion that I have raised in relation to the Southbank Police Station parking permits. I will move this motion. Is there a seconder? Councillor Crawford, thank you. All right. So I'll ask if anybody... Well, I guess I will speak to it and then ask for questions. Is that... I might ask for questions first. Does anybody have any questions in relation to the motion? Nope. All right. Then I will go ahead and speak to it. So this was actually a part of a previous vote when we were looking at parking permits, our policy more broadly, and we had decided to decline all. The Southbank police station is a little bit different in the fact that although it is within our boundary, it's the very top end, and they admit to be doing most of the work in the City of Melbourne. Sometimes they do offer support to the South Melbourne branch or station when they are understaffed. But the difference also, because we have police permits to St Kilda and South Melbourne, is that there are no garages or parking facilities that are accessible to those police stations in the nearby vicinity, whereas this one does. However, we've had feedback from the police station to say that those actually are more permitted out and not as readily available as we saw in the report, and so they were asking to have some permits reconsidered. So this is an attempt at finding the middle ground, maybe like a compromise situation, to introduce a few more permits back to them. Their request was for much higher, and I acknowledge that, and that it would be charged at the visitor parking rate, whereas we are not charging the other ones. So I would like that councillors would consider this tonight to support the police and their existence in our municipality. Councillor Crawford, would you like to speak to it?
Oh, just to say, look, we acknowledge the good work they do. It is a difficult situation. We have lots of these legacy car parking that is not applied equally or fairly across our municipality. So this is an attempt to take on some of what they've said in regards to their arrangements, but it also isn't fair to the wider community to continue with those legacy permits as they were.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak to the item? Councillor Sirikoff?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'll be supportive of this. I think it was unfortunate in the situation when we were looking at this back in May of this year, and there was a situation where we were going to be removing parking permits to the police, but I'm glad that this motion's been brought forward to amend that, because I think the police force play an important part in our community. They might have their day-to-day call-outs, which just ordinary situations, but then again they do face a lot of unpleasant situations, emergency situations, antisocial situations, and if this is one way that we can support them when they're going to work and going home again, to make it easy for them for accessing parking, I'm in support of this when they're a critical part of our safety on the streets. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors speaking to the item? Councillor Niagri?
I won't be supporting this. I think it's always a tricky thing. Unfortunately, when it comes to parking, there's lots of worthy groups and worthy individuals who would like to have better access to parking and further parking permits, but ultimately the point of the process we went through a couple of months ago was to reduce the number of difficult to administer bespoke permits, and I don't think creating another 30 bespoke permits that are slightly different to the other police permits is reducing the administrative burden to our staff, and I don't think ultimately that it is unreasonable for us to ask people who work in our city, most of whom in any other sector would not get a permit, to also find alternative methods. There are obviously public transport options available and other things, so I won't be supporting this.
Thank you. Anybody else speaking to the item? If not, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? All right, that's 5. All those against? That's 2. Thank you, that's carried. All right, I would like to... Now? Would nobody good time? Okay, I just had an update from Councillor Pearl that I'd like to submit an apology retrospectively on his behalf. He's not going to make it in time. He didn't think we'd be so fast. Look at us. All right. So that's recorded in the minutes. Thank you. Then we're going to move on to reports by councillor delegates. Does anybody have a report by councillor delegates you would like to give tonight? Moving on to urgent items of business. Councillors, do you have any urgent items of business I don't know about already? No? Thank you. Confidential matters. Councillors, we have no confidential reports listed on the agenda. There being no further business, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you. 7:17. Well done.